Hi, I'm Cindy Hyde, and I am the CEO and owner of Hyde Virtual Agency. Now, let me tell you a little backstory. I'm an author. I've got 7 books on Amazon. You can find them, amazon.com/author/Cindy Hyde. I started out, let's go all the way back to high school. I hated to read. I hated to read. Just flat out hated to read. And during those high school years, when we were required to read to pass the class, I did never finish a book. Not one time have I finished a book in high school. It wasn't until I was out of high school, I had my first child. I was up during and in between one of those nighttime feedings, and I was just wide awake. And I thought, well, I'm just going to read one of my mama's books, and it was a mystery kind of romance novel, mystery romance. And I started reading that book. It wasn't one of the big, thick, little bitty, thick romance novels. It was about half of that size. Let me tell you what. I started reading that book, and I could not put it down. I stayed up all night long and finished that book in one night. First time in my life at the age of 20 did I finish a book. Start from finish. I fell in love with books at that moment. And from then on, I knew that I wanted to write books. I didn't know what kind of books I wanted to write. Didn't even really pursue it. I was a young mother. And then I had another child, and then we went through a divorce, and one thing led to another. I became a paramedic, did that for about 6 years, and even then I remember writing stories down. Didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I wrote them down. So, it was a few years later. I injured my spine as a paramedic, and I thought, okay, what are you going to do with your life now? That led me down a road to enter into ministry for the last 30 years. During that time, I pursued my education and ended up with a master's in education. I'm also an ordained minister, and the love for words has only grown throughout that whole time period. I love words. I guess you could say I'm a wordsmith, although now I'm older, words are harder to find. I can see the pictures, but I can't get them from here to come out of here. And sometimes when they do, because I have ADD, they come out backwards. Like the time I was driving down the road by myself. Now, usually it only happens, the dyslexia and the twisting the words, usually only happens when I am with someone and I'm trying to tell them something. It will get crossed and come out backwards. Driving down the road, I see the tractors mowing. I see all these little tiny birds, and in my head I said, oh, look at all those grasshoppers. Look at all them birds is getting all those grasshoppers. Oh my God. I could not wait to go home and tell my husband that, hey, it's not just when I say things now, it's also happening backwards in my own brain. That was a pivotal moment in my life. So back to the first book. I wrote my first book as a legacy to my children. My husband lost his former wife in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. So tragic. He had taught 2 small boys. They had 2 small boys. And I, loved them. They were my babies. During that time, she had boxes and totes full of sermon messages, school papers that she had written, everything that she had left, because she was also a pastor, you couldn't really make sense of them because they were written by her, for whatever purpose was at that time. And so I felt like I needed to write something of my own for the kids before I left as a legacy, because she didn't leave them one. There wasn't a legacy with her, and you couldn't compile things to create a book from them or something that the kids would have as a keepsake. So I hand wrote, within just a matter of a couple of weeks, 100 devotionals for my children. I illustrated it, I formatted it in the order that I wanted it to be in, and I created the cover, and I created, the back and all the information, put a picture on it, everything on an old computer. And that was my first ever published book, I think in 95, I think. Anyway, I still have that little book somewhere, and those handwritten messages, and it was just so important for me to leave a legacy for those kids. My second book was A Woman of Acts. The Lord told me to write it as I was reading the book of Acts like 50 times. Someone said one time that he never preached out of a book of the Bible that he had not read 50 times. And I thought, oh, now that's a challenge. So as I was going through it 50 times, the Lord spoke to me and he said, I want you to write a book. I said, you want me to what? I said, well, I've never written a book before. I guess that was the legacy book was my second book, and it was called Wisdoms from the Heart. The first book that I wrote was this one called A Woman of Acts. Of course, it was out of the book of Acts, and it was steps that women could take to be and to become a woman after God's own heart. So I wrote that book. But when the Lord told me to write it, I'm like, you want me to what? You want me to write a book? I don't know how to write a book. Do you know what I heard? I heard him say, oh, but I do. And I thought, yes, Lord, you do. And you're going to show me how. And he did. And it wasn't hard to write that book because it was inspired. The next book I wrote was called Flames of Change, which was another biblically based, faith-based Bible study on how to change your way of living through the Holy Spirit. The third book I wrote was Prisoners of War, Shackled No More. And I published all these books, self-published, but not through like Amazon or anything. I just self-published them. And then I've written several other ones. I've written a total of 15 books throughout, the last several years, couple of decades or whatever. The book that I'm the most proud of is a workbook for writers who want to become authors or authorpreneurs. I had to learn how to publish my own books, and with a master's degree in education, it was easy for me to do the research because I was used to doing all the research for all the classes that I took. So research came easy for me. So I researched and I learned how to properly format a book. I learned how to edit it. I learned how to proofread. I learned how to, to format, add the titles and the page numbers and the back matter and the front matter, and I had to learn everything. Then I had to learn how to self-publish it. I had to learn how to create better covers than what I had actually created with my other old computer, because by now I was using a program called Canva, which if you're not using it and you're an author and you want to create your own cover, that is the best and easiest route for you to go. So, in learning all that, I just felt led because I am a teacher, And because my other passion is helping people, thus the ministry, I began helping other people get their books written and get them edited and get them formatted and get everything, done that needed to be done. So, and doing that, I wrote the book out of necessity and to help others. I love that book. The hardest book I've ever written was External Wounds from Internal, Internal Wounds, External Scars from Internal Wounds. I'll get it right eventually. This book, if I can get through this part without crying, is about my son getting, I don't know what he got. He got in some kind of frame of mind, and he decided he didn't want to be here anymore. He said he wasn't trying to kill himself, but he didn't want to die, but he just didn't want to be here. I personally really I can't get my head around that. I just can't. But he slit his throat with a dull knife, one side and then the other side, like that. Had he been 1/8 of an inch deeper, he would have severed his jugular that runs through here where your lifeblood flows. He would have severed that and would have, bled out quickly. He was in the middle of a field out in the middle of nowhere by Temple, Texas. If anybody knows where that is, it's a bunch of nothing out there. And I got a phone call and said, Cindy, your son, Sean, has slit his throat. Oh my goodness, I'm not going to go into all of that here, but the book tells that story and the impact that it had on me as his mother, the impact it had on his siblings. Just a hard thing to talk about. I praise God that he's still alive and that he survived that. I did an interview on my new podcast, Promote Your Book podcast, with a woman named Debbie Nealis. And her son, you can go and it's on Buzzsprout, it's on Apple Pods, it's on Spotify, it's out there. The podcast is syndicated, is what I'm trying to say. So you can listen to it on all major platforms. It's Promote Your Book podcast. .buzzsprout.com if you wanted to go there. And in her interview, she shared that her son had been molested by his father at 9 years old. And by the age of 18, he was an addict. He was struggling mentally. She tried everything she could as a mother to get him help, but he just could not get over the fact that had happened to him. It just really damaged him. And in the book, I also share about my brother hanging himself on Easter morning and the impact that had on our lives. And then I had a friend who was dealing with mental issues, who was staying with his parents and his two young sons, and he went home and he shot himself in the head at the house where his parents and his children were. So the book was the hardest book that I've ever written in my life. It also shares other stories, but it shares encouragement, and it's full of resources, and it's available on Amazon too if you want to read it. It is heart-wrenching, but I pull in the spiritual aspects of self-harm and suicide and all those kinds of things. The other book that I'm proud of, Kimberly Vega and I put it together, compiled it, and it's called Following Ancient Paths, and it is a 52-week chronological order of ancient stories from the Bible. It's amazing, and I love being able to hear history in the order that it happened, because the King James Bible is not in chronological order. Then, what else have I written? Several other books. And that leads me on to the fact that I started an agency, a virtual agency, so that I could help other people, other authors, other writers publish their books and learn how to do all these things that I had to learn to, that they didn't have to learn it because I knew how and was willing to help them. And I started actually charging for those author services instead of just always doing everything for free, which is what I have always done. I started the business, and I don't know, about a year later or so, after several books, and I was even working with a dentist in California that I just loved working for her. Shout out to Dr. I can't even remember her name. Yeah. What in the world? Anyway, she's got a program called Grow with the Gram that I helped her with. But COVID hit, and it hit me, and it hit me hard. As an empath, as you can see me crying with all the others, I am an empath. And because of that, I can feel things that other people feel. I feel their pain. And that was one of the things that made me a good minister, is that I could feel when someone was brokenhearted. It was like I felt the brokenness. And I got very sick, coughed up blood for 2 weeks, told my husband, if you take me to the hospital, they're going to kill me, so I'm ready to go. If I die, I'll see you in a little while. If I don't, then by God's grace, I'm here for more whatever He has planned for me. So I closed the business down. I was not physically or mentally, may I say, capable of doing much of anything. Fast forward, the agency that I had then was called Cindy Hyde Virtual Agency. So several years go by, well, at least probably 2, maybe 2.5, and I had a book job to do. A woman sent me her handwritten manuscript in a notebook, and I read it and told her yes, I thought it was worth publishing. So I took the job. I did the job for free. I did charge for some of the other services, but I did my part. She didn't have much money, so I wanted to help her get her story told. That's how important stories are to me. So I worked with her after I read it, after I got it typed up. I worked with her a little bit on trying to get her voice, her story, her way, but to really get her voice and not to edit things out that were said the way she would say them. Let's just put it that way. I wanted to be true to her and her story through her book. And it's called Peace at Last. Beautiful story. It's available on Amazon too, by the way. Doing that book, I procrastinated so bad. My hands got jammed up and I couldn't hardly use them for, I don't know, almost a couple of weeks. I got sick again for a few weeks. My daughter had to have emergency. So, I mean, just one eventful thing after another. But I woke up one morning and I thought, you know what? I feel I'm going to go in there and I'm going to write that book. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to type that book up and I'm going to start and I'm not going to stop until I get done. I didn't get done in one day. It took me 3 days to type it all up because that was just such a hard thing for me to do. Having ADD has its own set of struggles, and doing mundane things like typing up a text is one of those. But when I got the book finished, I had the cover finished, I formatted it, got it all together, got it proofread, ordered her a copy, hard copy, for a paperback copy, and sent it to her so she could have it in her hands, and she made a couple of adjustments. I made the changes. I republished it for her through KDP on Amazon, so it's on Amazon. But during that process, something happened to me. I'm going to call it motivation, because I felt something that I had not felt in years. And I did not recognize what it was. I just did not recognize motivation when it hit me. Well, after the motivation hit, then there was something else that hit me, and it was creativity. It was innovation. It was creativity. It was inspiration. It was like, oh my gosh, I was on fire. On fire. Let me tell you, I was on fire. I guess you got that point. The Lord impressed me, and I had the desire to relaunch my virtual business, to relaunch my online business, but to rebrand it and to like start afresh. You're still doing the same thing that you were doing, but you're like resurrecting your business. You're rebranding, you're rebooting, you're all those things that you can think of. And so that's what I started doing. So I created a website called HydeVirtualAgency.com. And then I thought, well, I can't have a good business agency without having one for myself, because I'm a life coach, I'm a faith-based counselor, I'm a teacher, educator, all these things that I am and all these things that I offer. They needed a space for those things, not just on the Hyde virtual reality. So I had to separate me, myself, and all that I do and am from the actual business. So I have CindyLHyde.com and HydeVirtualAgency.com. And yes, I almost say Hyde virtual reality every time. Almost Hyde, but every time. I have to catch myself. That was the birthing of Hyde Virtual Agency. Well, a blooper. Excuse me. After launching the agency, I got some help, and then I got some more help, and then I got some more help. So we have a team of 3, and you can meet them if you go to HydeVirtualAgency.com. You can meet the team. We have a page there for them on the About Us page, I believe. So the whole point of that is that it has outgrown me. Because when you get into helping writers publish and, to write and publish and promote their book, you have to get into book marketing, or what's the point? Because all authors have to market their books. It's not natural. It doesn't just come. People, if they don't know it's there, they're not going to be able to find it. And if they can't find it, they can't buy it. And if they can't buy it, they can't read it. Plain and simple. If you write a book, you're going to have to market it. I didn't know that in the beginning. I didn't know that until after I wrote the book, because I guess I thought if I published it on Amazon that they did the marketing, or that they did the publicity or whatever. No. If you want that done, you have to pay for it. So, doing all that led me to get into creating marketing strategy plans, strategic marketing plans and social media plans, strategic ones. That would be, like each one of my books are a different genre. Just about, there's a couple that are in the same genre. I even wrote a children's book this year. I'm so excited about that. And when you start book marketing, you learn that there's, oh my gosh, the sky is the limit. How many ways can you think of to get your book in front of a reader, or to raise awareness about it or you and what you do and what you support? And so I wrote a book called Creating 5 Income Streams from Your Printed Book. It's a pretty good seller. People like those. I think we all want to make money, don't we? We all need it. We all pretty much have to have it to survive, don't we? So that workbook, along with the book Creating 5 Income Streams, you can find everything you need, from how to organize your thoughts, how to organize your chapters, which I tell people get sticky notes and a cardboard paper, the poster board or whatever, and start just brain dump and get all your little ideas on sticky notes, or cut index cards in half, or whatever you need to do. I love mind mapping because my brain is kind of scattered and all over the place. But it covers organizing your thoughts and organizing your book and actually writing your book, and how to use things like Grammarly to help you write your book so that you're not making, too many grammatical mistakes. We're all going to make them. And then there's the typos. And Grammarly doesn't catch everything. So you have to learn to really proofread and edit your book. But guess what? We're our own worst editors because we wrote the book. So unless you look at your book backwards to make sure that the sentence is the way it's supposed to be, you're not going to be able to edit your own books very good. So that's one little tidbit. But Hyde Virtual Agency is here to help writers write their book, get their book self-published and promoted so that they can make money with their books. We help with every step of the process. We help as little or as much as you need. If you just write your book and get to the point to where you need somebody to edit it, we've got you. If you need somebody to format it, we've got you. If you need somebody to create a cover, we got you. If you need somebody to help promote your book, we've got you there too. If you need somebody to help you self-publish, if you want to do it on your own and you just need some coaching or some guidance or whatever you need, we've got you there too. We've got you with the podcast that we can promote your book around the world to millions of people because it is syndicated, and we do advertise for the book, for the podcast, but we also started a promote your book blog for the people who are shy and don't necessarily want to be on a podcast. Because there are a lot of writers who are introverts. In that, we have developed a one-stop shop, if you will, that covers everything that an author would need. Everything. From scheduling scheduling book signings and book launches, and devising strategic plans for everything, creating book covers. I said all that, but all the graphic design. I didn't go into the social media because you have to have that to promote your book. You have to have an author platform. You have to have a website, and I am good at all that. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I'm good at all of it because I've done it so long, and because that's what I trained for. That's what I went to school for. I have a degree in information technology, visual communication. I have a communications degree, and of course, the master's in education. with online education and training. So I am highly trained and equipped to be able to help you make your writing dreams a reality.